Welcome to the Near Future podcast, where this week Jonny and myself are with Patrick Lewis, who is a product designer at the forefront of working with AI. Patrick and I briefly worked together or slightly overlapped about 10 years ago now. I was leaving BuzzFeed and you were joining, and then you've gone on to do various exciting things with various startups, speaking with Y Combinator, with founding teams, all sorts of exciting things. And the specific reason I wanted to invite you on to have this discussion today is when we caught up earlier this year, about 6 months ago, the way you were working as a designer using AI coding tools was really blowing my mind at how advanced you could get and how far into production you could take your process. So that was a really inspiring. So thank you for joining us
Yeah,
today.
thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. Perhaps you could give us a quick overview of where you're working today and what you've been up to the last six to
Yeah,
12
sure.
months work-wise.
So I'm currently the founding designer of a company called Klay. That's Klay with a K, not the sales automation tool. Klay is a music app that allows users to hear their favorite songs in a completely new way and really feel like artists themselves. It is an AI music app. However, it's an AI music app that was started by musicians. I'm pretty sure everyone at the company is a musician. Our CEO was a classically trained, like touring pianist, and the other co-founder used to run Sony Music, and so we're folks who deeply care about artists, and we're actually trying to make music a first class medium in the way that like video is today. And before Klay, I was the founder and CEO of a company called Tortuga. Tortuga started as an AI app studio, but after building 3 apps, we realized, just because you build it doesn't necessarily mean they'll come. And so we began to focus on building a suite of distribution tools for other builders. And yeah, that's sort of what I've been up to in the last year and a half or so.
Excellent. And I feel like there's a theme in your work around, or those examples in particular, around content and
Hmm.
creativity. So whether that's in music, or I know some of your go-to-market tools
Yeah.
involved video, avatars, and things like this. I wonder if you could tell us what it's like from the frontier in terms of AI's role in relation to
Ooh.
content creation. Like, do you have any are there themes that transcend those two areas you've worked in? Like, tell us more about that.
Well, big question. I think there's definitely like an underlying thing where like the human is still the most important piece of this. So like obviously when we talk about Clay, we're talking about musicians and artists. We're trying to kind of elevate them and sort of level the playing field a bit compared to some of the other music platforms. But I think content I don't know, like it has to resonate with the people, even if it's AI avatars or talking to you on TikTok or whatever. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're still trying to talk to a person, and so if the message doesn't resonate, then it kind of it's a waste. And I think the same thing with like generative music, where bad generative music is just noise, and so yeah, I think there's something there. And Tom, I know when we caught up earlier this year, I think I maybe showed you at Tortuga, we were running a newsletter, and we obviously used AI to help write some of that stuff. But the way we were doing it was based on conversations that my co-founder and I were having, that we were taking directly from and then building it out from there, as opposed to just telling Claude or ChatGPT, make me a blog post about the 5 design, traps you can fall into or whatever, right? So, yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, like content is for people and still has to kind of resonate there.
Yeah, so true. Were there any, this is not really a podcast about building out sort of detailed pictures of your
Sure.
workflow, but I'm curious about the limits that you came up against, especially in that the blog post writing example. Are there challenges that were, are you still running that today? Were there challenges that meant that it was too difficult to fully automate, but things that you sort of think could be resolved in the near
Yeah, I
future?
think that so we've kind of paused the newsletter for now, but I think that I suppose in like delivery logistics, everyone talks about like the last mile. I think the last mile in terms of content delivery still could use an awful lot of love and sort of work. We were using Kit, I believe, for our newsletter to distribute it. And, the platform was far more confusing and traditional than I think we can do better in 2025, 2026, right? So I do think like that was sort of a part of the workflow that I thought was like, could be vastly improved. Of course, today maybe I just go, all right, I'll try to build something like that myself. But not that that's advisable. But yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah, the and I think there was an example from your work at during Tortuga around video avatars as
Yeah.
well on social media. That seemed like a really fascinating technical challenge to do
Hmm.
well. Were there I'm curious about the editorial challenges of making something so human-like, and how you are there any design principles or design takeaways
Hmm.
for how to navigate something that feels
Yeah.
human but is AI, or vice
Yeah.
versa?
I think uh, probably the best or like the most transferable design principle there is just that consistency builds trust. So I think with any, if you're designing a checkout flow or financial product, right? Like the moment that there's something that feels off to the user or inconsistent to the user, they begin to ask questions, and that takes them out of, buying the thing or transferring the thing or whatever it might be. And when you take that and you apply it to the tool that we built was called OV, and I wish there was a cooler reason behind the name. I just came up with the name because the logo could be made out of the icons for videos. So a stop button, sort of a tilted play button, and then a pause button. But yeah, obviously when you're creating those avatars and creating those videos, the character needs to be consistent, and so people begin to recognize, when that person pops up in their feed, that they're talking about whatever the product is or problem is. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like there's in this era that we're in right now, it feels like trust is such an
Yeah.
important quality, and I feel like a lot of these design choices ladder up to either a human being behind it, or there's consistency in how something is presented so that it feels more trustworthy. Did you Yeah, I'm curious if that's still a theme in your work now at Klay, how that sort of been a factor in your design
Yeah.
process.
I think with Klay, it's probably less of an issue around sort of like trust. Ultimately, like on the business side of things, like the artists are trusting us to, make sure that their like revenue split is, representative of their listening time and things like that. But yeah, less of a theme at Klay right now.
That makes sense. So I think we rushed too quickly into content, because I really had a few more questions to ask you around being a
Yeah.
designer at this moment in
Yeah.
time. And before we started recording, you were talking a bit about Figma and how Figma fits into your workflow, or how it
Yeah.
doesn't. And I'm curious if you could just give us a sort of snapshot of what your
Sure.
daily design workflow looks
Yeah.
like. How is that right now? What does it consist of?
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you what I'm up to today, and kind of what after this podcast I'll be doing. So I'm working on a feed, and so I think this is the feed needs to be dynamic, and it needs to adjust to inputs that the user is giving it. And these are things that I just think fundamentally, like Figma is not really in a position to do or to help me create. And so with code, I'm able to very quickly prototype something and then put it in the hands of the team and understand how it feels in the hand. And I'm always a big advocate of that. I think, on the screen is one thing, but feeling it, swiping it, touching it, that sort of tangible aspect makes a big difference. And doing so, I could probably like finagle Figma to allow me to do that in like the spaghetti string of prototyping inside of Figma, or I could just, code it up and make sure like all the principles and things are still there. And, I think it's just a much faster way. So yeah, I rarely open Figma these days.
Interesting. We're sort of basically doing a poll with our guests of like Figma bulls and bears, and
Yeah.
it feels like a sort of a rough even split. I personally have always found Figma frustrating as a designer who likes to get into code and like build something real.
Yeah.
And towards the beginning of this year, I was like, Figma's gonna die. Like I was one of those guys probably. Watching the stock price go down and be like, yes, I'm
Sure.
right. And then I suppose my opinion right now is a little bit more measured, in part because I've been designing something, and I think my hope for everyone can now design with AI was that it would feel like I felt when I was designing in code years ago, where it would take as long, but it would just
Yep.
be better at the end. Like it would be higher fidelity,
Yes.
but it would
Yes.
still like be slow enough that you would get to try things and take your time over something. And I feel like what we have now is like everything's so fast. Like you just ask for it and then it spits out a load of stuff and you're like, I mean, it's not how I would have done it, but I don't really
Sure.
feel like I can be bothered to change it. I'd rather just build the next thing or
Right.
and so I found myself going back to Figma in the
Mm.
last week or two, just so that I can sit with a button for a bit and explore
Yeah.
what different inner shadows look like just for a hot
Yeah.
second, which I could actually do in code as well. And that's what I was
For
doing
sure.
before all of this happened. But I just found it really fascinating.
I
But
I do think
yeah,
that Figma still has its place. I was probably with you, and then like Figma's gonna die, and then saw the stock price as well, and was just like, yeah, I was right. But not that that makes me happy. I've friends that work there, and want the best outcomes for them. But I think like where I use Figma mostly today is around visual and like brand and identity design. That's still something where I have yet to develop a workflow or even see a workflow that can match what I'm
mm,
able to do in Figma when it comes to those things. So as a source of truth for product design, I don't think Figma is that anymore. But I do think that it allows certainly level of granularity and finesse that maybe when you're looking at a whole thing
yeah.
that you've coded up, it's hard to kind of focus in on one element
I
sometimes.
suppose it's that like moving it away from source of truth to a more ancillary tool where you're like sketching
Yep.
in it and
Yeah.
exploring
Yeah.
visually, and then actually you take that into the tool where actually you do where the
Yeah.
end result lives.
And I'll occasionally do that. Like I'll block out sort of layouts and different things and stuff inside of Figma, and then bring that over into code and say like, hey, like use this as the foundation. Here's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Like let's work from there. So yeah, it's I think it's good at the very beginning potentially, and then I think Figma earns its place potentially at the very end as well.
Mm.
But I do think that for a large part of the flow, like you can reach higher fidelity and more accurately represent what you're trying to build using code.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Patrick, I'd love to. I mean, I think this is a continuation of the existing conversation, but you mentioned
Yeah,
Klay and the fact that you're a founding designer and you just joined. And I've been a founding designer before.
yeah,
Being a founding designer in 2026 probably might be in some part a little bit different to previously. You know, you
yeah.
can be so much more empowered and you can just attack stuff. So I'm just interested in like in your first 90 days or whatever the
Yeah,
cliche is,
yeah,
like
yeah.
what have you been able to do that I think that you couldn't have done before? And is there anything that people can think about if they're going to be a design team of one,
A hundred
especially?
percent. So I've been very fortunate to be a founding designer now four times in my career. So last year, two of the companies that I helped start exited, and that was great. And I think that I think that founding designers require like an awful lot of trust, and it's like a with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like you get to shape the thing, but you also have a responsibility and to set everyone else up for success.
Mm.
It's there's a lot of design in that position, but there's an awful lot of everything else in there too. I think the way that being a founding designer is different this time around is really it's how quickly can you get the context of what's happened before you got here. And so I've seen I had a client recently that their team was probably the most efficient and like AI forward, like operationally that I'd ever seen, where every meeting is recorded. They have skills that then turn those into sort of like here are the decisions. Here's what who made those decisions. Like everything is tracked, and they're able to then assign those to dos to an agent, takes it, does it, and that's not quite like we're not quite set up like that at Klay. Um, but man, does that make it an awful lot easier to be effective earlier. And so, what I've done this time around is really just try to build my own. It's kind of like be the change you want to see in the world, right? Like, so any meetings I have get recorded, get fed into a common system, are able to be queryable, these sorts of things. And then that's kind of allowed me to be more effective. I think the other thing that I did this time around that I felt has been really successful early on was I made a pun sort of playground where I'm able to just sort of explore using code and prototyping at pretty high fidelity, uh, but it gives me a space to just go to town and sort of be free of any of the design work that may have happened before. And I think that's actually been really
Yeah.
helpful as well.
Playground. Oh, not every company is
Playground.
going to be able to have that pun. That
No,
is
yeah, it's a good
that
one.
is a uniquely good
Yeah,
opportunity for
yeah,
you. You had to, as soon as you thought of the pun, you must have had to create it. Just it would have been a
100%.
crime to have not. Yeah. And
I was,
is that using
is
your
that,
like production components, or are you built? Is this like greenfield
yeah,
stuff, or are you pulling in production code?
great. So the first week I was there, I created a design system, and so Playground uses those components, but they're very just like primitive, basic components that we can later customize and do whatever we want with. But I just needed like a sort of the building blocks, the Legos, and I'm able to kind of create something that looks and feels like Clay, even though that is subject to change as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. For context, presumably there's a few engineers or some engineering
yeah.
team that exists. Like, did they welcome you with open arms into the code base and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that what's been interesting is just to see, depending on where the engineer has been and what level of exposure they've had to like AI in design. And so, I've had conversations where it's like, hey, like design's more than just UI, right? But I've also had conversations where it's like, yeah, like here's this full blown animation. It's documented here. You can just take this, bring it into your code, and like you're good to go, and sort of like blow their minds, right?
Mm.
And at that point, you've kind of earned your cred, if you will, right? And like now I have edit access in the repo, so but yeah, so no, I think it's been mostly a welcome thing because truthfully, at least most of the engineers I've worked with, like that's not why they got into engineering to begin with, right? Like if they wanted to be a designer, they would be a designer, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's been a welcome thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you're the first designer, they will have been excited about having some design resource to make
Oh
their
yeah,
UI
I
look
mean,
better.
I was like water in the desert.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're very excited to have me on board for sure.
yeah.
I have a question sort of related to this theme, but sort of relates more to hiring
Yeah,
and positioning. And I feel like there's a lot of designers out there who are being laid off or
yeah,
struggling to
yep,
find the right role. and then there's a small select group of people who are very in demand
Yeah.
and are batting away people away. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or comments on what that experience has been like for you over the last year, since it sounds like you've changed companies a few
Yeah.
times, and specifically with this skill set that you
Yeah.
bring, because I could imagine this is very seen as very valuable, especially for an early stage
Yeah.
company, to bring someone in who has that skill. And I'm curious, how much do you think how much of a significance that plays in why Klay wanted to bring you in, for
Yeah.
instance, versus just because of your sort of traditional
Yeah.
strong UI design
Yeah.
skills?
Along with being a founding designer, one of the really cool things you get to do is hire a design team. And I really enjoy hiring folks who have never been designers before and kind of giving them their first shot. It's by far been the most rewarding thing in my career. And I've kept in touch with each of those designers, and at this point, most of them are better than me. But I have a good friend named Jay, who last year she really struggled to find a design job, and she came to me in December and shared very open, kind of vulnerably with me that like, hey, I'm really struggling, and I'm not sure design is for me anymore. It seems like design has sort of passed me by, and obviously that made me sad, but also want to help. And so we began working together a couple times a week to sort of build up and they kind of just get her exposed to some of these new skills. And unfortunately, like she was able to land a job pretty quickly after that. I think that I've seen even like really, really senior designers, like 15 plus years experience, struggle to get jobs. And so I'm always cautious to say like this is easy because it's not. But I do think that now more than ever, what AI has done is flatten the like experience curve. Previously you would look for a designer with 10 plus years experience to do whatever, right? There's an argument to be made that while yes, that person is probably still the better designer, who's the most effective candidate? And it might be a designer who has less experience, but who has more exposure and has used sort of these more modern tools and processes. So I'm a firm believer. Like I do believe that regardless of how we feel about AI and AI's role in craft and creativity, I do think that it is a little bit of like adopt or die. And so the thing that I've enjoyed most, and like I probably have had this has probably been the most fun year and a half or so of my career, is really that like as designers, the things that used to always bother us, we can own, and like now we get to kind of see that as an opportunity to make that change, right? So like there's no oh like engineering's overwhelmed and like that button is off center, but it's going to remain off center because it's not a priority. And no, you can just hop in and make the change and submit the PR, and there you go. Like so I think that if we tweak the mindset as designers that like this is not going to replace us, this is going to make us more effective. I do think that that can sort of help. But yeah, hopefully I answered the question. I
Yeah,
don't
that
I don't actually now I'm like
yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's answered a different question that was sort of very, very closely connected. But yeah, and maybe you weren't comfortable answering the question of like you specifically, and maybe you can't even answer it because it was really the founders at Klay who would have answered like how important was that for them
yeah,
when they were looking for you. But I do think there's this interesting dynamic in various companies and people that Jonny and I speak with where there are companies that are extremely AI native who want to hire designers and really value deep engineering
yeah,
expertise and AI expertise. And then there are some companies at the other end, generally larger, more traditional companies, where they have huge
yeah,
design teams and they are in secure industries where they can't actually have any designers using AI
right,
tools yet. And I think there's a sort of very wide spectrum where companies are struggling to find the right talent, but also the right people who want to work in a certain
yeah,
way, have more choice they're more maybe restricted about what the options are, but there's more of an intentional choice around, do I go to the company where it's maybe more of a traditional setup, but I won't get exposed to AI tooling,
Yeah.
versus a choice where you have to go deep into AI to be useful to how that company operates. And that feels like a very wide difference. I think there's a huge difference in those companies right
Yeah.
now. So I was kind of interested in how that's played out for you in in Clay's decision
Yeah.
to hire you, and also it sounds like from our conversation so far you've been following this thread of really having fun or enjoying working
Yeah.
with AI as an assistant for coding. Yeah, I'm curious how much of that's been influenced by the shape of teams that you've wanted to
Yeah.
work with versus
Yeah.
just yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe an important thing. Like I don't think I would be a very good fit at like really large companies for a variety of reasons. But I enjoy like doing more, wearing multiple hats, and so like I've always erred on the side of super early stage stuff. I've taken a few departures, BuzzFeed included, because there was at the time a head of design there who I really respected and wanted to be a part of his team, Cap Watkins, and but for the most part, my career has been super early stage stuff, and so I think that it makes sense because that's sort of the type of team and size of team and stage of company that I enjoy. That's the skill set that I've sort of focused on, is like, how do I sort of outproduce what you get when you hire one designer? To me, like if you hire me, you get someone who has been a founder and like has a business degree and has some technical chops and also is a designer. Yeah, I think there's a completely different shape skill set that I probably don't have to join a really large company. And so yeah, I do think there's this there's kind of a chasm that's formed. Like I think you hit the nail on the head where like you have small teams who need the most out of the small number of people they're able to hire, and so they're looking for really broad skill sets. And then I think you've got some industries and some larger companies who are hiring designers who can go really deep because they have a team of design engineers and front end engineers and all these sorts of things that like the early stage company just really can't afford.
I think it demonstrates maybe your tenure as a designer, that you can sort of confidently know thyself or whatever, and
Yes.
understand like
Yeah.
what you're into and what you're less suited for. I hope I know that in myself as well, and I think it's something that everyone should sort of strive towards, to feel comfortable in your own skin, or to sort of not look over the wall and always think, oh, maybe I should be doing that as well. Actually saying, yeah, that's cool that they can do that, and it's cool that that is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that that company hires for, and it's not for me, and to be at peace with that. I do think it's
My
really hard in this Twitter X driven design
Yep. Sphere.
ecosystem to not feel like you're always behind. You should always be doing more of the thing you're not doing constantly. I'm just interested in like, were you always did you always understand this, or was it just a process of
So
like mistakes?
yeah, no, this it gives me a good chance to tell a good story. So my best friend is like a CPO at a bunch of companies that everyone and their mom has heard of. And we met really early in our careers, and they took wildly different paths. Right, I went super small, and he went very large. And it's always interesting to me because we share a lot of the same characteristics and we enjoy a lot of the same things, but we've just applied them very differently. And so I think that the takeaway, the advice that he gave me a very long time ago was just like to sort of tell a good story, and a good story allows people to root for the main character, right? Like wanting you to succeed. It allows them to want to be a part of it, and and you can sort of follow it. And so anytime I make a career decision, I think about the story that it tells, and obviously, I've like there's a drawback to that too, which is like when you realize a company is not for you, it does require you to then leave, and sort of go find something that is true to you. And but I'm just always like, I'm a person who, if I love something, I will work harder than anyone else to be good at that thing, even if I'm not good at it yet. And funnily enough, like, I earned a track and field scholarship for discus and hammer throwing to college. And most discus and hammer throwers are very tall and have super long arms. I am neither of those things, and definitely I have like T-Rex arms. And but I practiced on Christmas, my birthday. I practiced on the day of the prom. I practiced when it was cold, when it was hot, and I just would outwork the other people. And so I think it requires you to sort of identify in yourself what you enjoy doing, and then that ideally makes the work a little bit easier, or at least, in the kind of dog days, in the, when churn's at an all-time high, when CAC is too high, like all this sort of stuff, it allows you to keep showing up and be excited about the thing that you're doing. But it definitely took me a little bit to kind of identify that. But
And as a founder, those highs and lows are significant.
oh yeah,
So to have a practice that you can lean on, and like to sort of know where your energy comes from, and like why you're doing what you're doing, and all of that stuff is so important. Otherwise, you can get lost in what's happened today, or what the last
and I
person
think
said to you, or how the
yeah,
investor
and
meeting went, etc.
yeah, I think the other thing that you brought up was like around X and sort of the design narrative and conversations that are happening. And it is really easy to feel like you're falling behind, or you're missing out, or you're not going to make it, or whatever it might be. I do think that trying to, maybe as cheesy as it sounds or whatever, but trying to like look inward and understand like what are you about? What do you find joy in? Can you do more of that? What you're good at? Like,
Mm.
I'm not good at, if you ask me to fine tune the inner shadows of a button more than twice, I'm probably going to go crazy. I'm just going to be like, shift the button. Let's see if anyone clicks on it, and then we can make it good. But yeah, but I do think that like just knowing that is a really big skill, and something that, I don't know, it's a gift. Like, clarity is a gift, Yeah.
I think before we started recording, you said, and I wrote this down, saying no is more important than
Yeah.
never. And I feel like that's a nice sort of
Hmm.
theme that you've been covering as well, with the idea of knowing yourself, of getting a certain expertise, or a depth of expertise to be able to draw from that. I'm curious if you could expand on that a little bit. Is there anything else that makes you think of, saying no is more important than ever now?
I think that in that context, right? Like, fortunately, the skill set that I have has been in demand, and so whenever opportunities are presented to me, they kind of go through that same sort of filter. And is this going to be something I enjoy doing? Is this going to help me grow or develop more skills, or present new opportunities in the future and stuff? So I think like learning to say no to opportunities, and I realize that's a place of privilege, that like, hey, listen, like, you got bills to pay, you're gonna say yes. Like, I've had lots of jobs, and being a designer is by far the best one. But at the same time, if you are in a position where like, hey, like, you're being recruited by a couple different companies, like, knowing yourself, knowing your skill set and what you want to get out of it is going to help you sort of make the most informed decision. And then obviously, like, in practice, like in design, with AI, it almost feels like, anything is possible. But that can also be, that can also have its downsides too, right? Like, I think you can just find yourself endlessly tweaking and playing with things and adding things, and yeah, at some point you gotta know when to stop. And I wish I had a great framework or something to like work off of, but a lot of times it's just, you feel it. And I try to keep in mind that like everything has to kind of earn its place. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that actually, in relation to a comment you had earlier about working like with a small team, and engineers trust you enough to give
Mm.
you edit access and GitHub and all these, like, it clearly shows you've built a strong trusted relationship with engineering, which is really good. But is there a downside to that, that your day-to-day work is pull so much into the engineering space that it is harder to do the pure design tasks. I'm curious where saying no and pushing back fits into that overall picture of how you like to
I
operate.
think, I think that at least at Clay, the thing I've been focused on is really saying no to additional features, right? Like I think that it just because things are easier doesn't necessarily mean they take less time, right? I think we talked before we hopped on here the difference between good and right? And like it's never been easier to make something good. Like that's you can make something good if you know what you're doing, but making it right, knowing what's right, is still very very hard. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that by saying no to additional features, to scope creep, this type of stuff, I'm able to reserve a bit more time to focus on the design of the feature set that we have today. Because if you just try to kind of spread yourself too thin, I don't think it's possible to do like really high quality work. That stuff still takes time.
Feels like the perpetual
Yeah.
balance of a founding designership, to be honest, is like you're
Yep.
constantly advocating for more time and less time at the same time. Like to yourself, you're
Yep.
saying maybe I should go faster, and to the rest of the organization, you're still
Yes.
saying I actually this we should do this better than this, or there's this
Correct.
constant tightrope you're walking between the two.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of these things where I want my friends to try the product, but I don't want my designer friends to try the product. And so, but that's actually like that's the right, at least so far in my career that I've found that's the right balance. Like you kind of if you wait too long to where it's really impressive to your designer friends, chances are like you've gotten beat out, beat to the punch by someone else. But if you ship
So true.
too soon, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's sort of yeah. It is a constant tension there, and yeah,
Ask you one more question, Patrick, before we switch to our quickfire
sure.
questions. The point you said there really made me think of this, of as a founding designer, in addition to those two things you mentioned, you're also somewhat responsible for knowing when something is the workload is beyond the scope of what's reasonable for a single
Yeah,
person, and when you should hire someone, or when you should bring in perhaps someone to focus more on the brand, or you focus on the
yeah,
product or marketing or some other aspect of the craft. I think you're in a unique position to be able to calibrate when that line is, and I'm curious if that is in the same point as it was 2 years ago, or
Mhm.
if you now feel like your capacity is significantly changed as a result of using AI to do more adjacent design
Yeah.
disciplines.
So I do believe that capacity has definitely grown. I think that's also presenting some challenges in the job market, right? Like companies feel like they can get more out of their existing team, so you're seeing hiring slow down, or you're seeing folks unfortunately get laid off as well. But I do think the capacity is greater, and I think the scope of the things you're able to do is greater. So not only are you able to do more of it, but you're able to do more of it. And Yeah, that's certainly true. That bar has definitely changed a little bit. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I actually don't know when the next like when we will hire. I'll let you know when the next hire for Clay's design team happens, because I don't anticipate it will be for a while. And But I do also believe in bringing folks in for specific disciplines. So like brand is something that I'm super passionate about, and I think is, to me at least, the hardest design discipline to nail. And so allowing someone to just go deep on that and focus on that while I handle all the other things is valuable.
It found the founding designer loves to be Atlas with the weight of the world on their shoulders, and as soon as there's someone else
Yeah,
hired, then you lose that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
lose that
There's
sort
also
of
yeah, yeah.
that hard
Also, yeah,
hard as nails sort of
we'll do
I'll take it on. I'll take something else on.
whatever
I'm
it is.
designing two different things with my two different hands.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. But I don't think that's all that much different from just being a founder itself. It's like it's hard to give that up and like allow someone else to sort of run with things for a while.
yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
Right. Shall we switch to
Let's
quickfire?
Yes. So Patrick, we have a few quickfire questions. These are short questions and hopefully have short
Yep.
answers. So we'll maybe pick a couple each and we'll wrap
That
up
sounds great.
there. My first question for you is, when AGI takes over everything, what will you do with all your free
Yeah.
time?
So I thought about this a little bit. So I'm glad you asked it. I really enjoy chairs, and so I would just make chairs. I would get some woodworking tools and go to town. I'm big fan of like interior design stuff, and so I think that making kind of furniture would be really enjoyable and still allow me to be creative. Still allow me to like see the output and sort of get user feedback, I guess. But yeah.
Love it. Love it. So it's particularly wooden chairs,
I mean,
woodworking for
I
chairs,
suppose
or any
I
sort of
could sort
chair.
of brush up on my upholstery skills and maybe add some cushions there or
Yep.
something. But yeah,
Amazing.
Love
Of
it.
the three doors designers choose when they answer this question, which is the buckets of music, coffee slash meat, and furniture slash making things with your hands, you have chosen
yeah,
door number three.
yeah. Door number three. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
My question for you is, what's one thing about your craft that you don't want to give over to AI?
Decision making. I want to have the call. Sort of like use like a sports analogy. Like if it's the fourth quarter, like I want the ball in my hands, and so I don't want to hand that over. And I think organizationally, it's still important to have humans kind of own the outcomes. And
Mm,
so I think that's probably the thing I'd say.
amen. Tom, over to you.
My last question. So, what is the silliest thing you've prototyped purely because you could?
Yeah. So since moving to Rhode Island, I've gotten back in the gym, and I, despite there being a million fitness apps out there, I definitely made my own, but hard coded it to just my workout program. So it's really a single player, single user sort of experience, just completely over engineered. But it allowed me to do some branding and do a little iOS stuff. And yeah, but just absolutely no good reason to have that, and way more work than the utility, but still fun. So.
Amazing, amazing. And so the workout itself is hard coded
Yeah,
in.
yeah, the
Yeah.
workout program, like how many
Okay.
rep stuff. It's just like a yeah. But I recently talked to my trainer though, and was like, hey, listen, I can make one of these for all of your clients. So we'll see. But yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. And my last question, and our last quickfire question, is what is your favorite product at the moment?
Ooh. Okay. Good question. Hang on. Let me pull out my phone here and just kind of do a quick check. I mean, I'm not gonna say Claude, right? Like we can't. Like that's
Some people
no
have,
good
but
stuff.
we recommend you
No,
don't. Yeah,
we can't.
yeah.
Yeah, we can. We gotta do something cool. Big fan of granola. It's powered sort of the second brain that I have with Klay. It's part of my like PRD workflow. It was part of our newsletter workflow. And I just think they've done a really, really good job at making a very simple product do the thing that it does really well. And so, yeah, I've gotten a bunch of people to adopt it and start using it and stuff. And so, yeah, probably
Awesome.
granola.
Born and bred round the corner from us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
London
very
team.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there.
Uh,
The moment that it sort of clicked for me was at the end of last year. They do like Spotify Wrapped and all this sort of stuff, and Granola did their version, and their Wrapped was so accurate and so good that I realized just how well they knew me and knew my work and knew my team. That I was like, got it. Like this is insanely valuable. Uh, yeah, no, they're killer. I'm a big fan of what they've built.
yes. Yeah. We
Love it.
both
Love it.
also users.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
awesome.
Patrick, where do we find you online? Like, is there anything you want us to add into the show notes or shout out for you?
So So based on my take on design Twitter, you won't find me much on Twitter. So you can find me, I guess, just on my website, patrickinlewis.com. I occasionally update, do a little writing, and then I share some skills that I've made just based on my kind of workflow and experience.
Awesome.
Well, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, Patrick. Super cool to hear about your work and how that's evolved since we used to work together. And this has been great. So let's wrap up there. Thanks so much for everyone for listening and making it this far. And thanks so much, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
See you. Bye.